All right, so I think that just about everyone who's filtering in post-coffee break has filtered in, so we'll get started. So my name is Heather, and I will be talking to you this morning about designing your navigation. I'll be talking to you. I'll be talking to you about designing your navigation, some of the research that you need to do, some of the decisions you need to consider, and then what it can actually look like on your site. So, like I mentioned, I'm Heather Bauer. I am a UX product specialist at Bauer. I do a little bit of the entire UX process there, so I have my toes in a lot of pools. It's a lot of fun. And I received my master's in human factors and information design, which is a really big mouthful for usability at Bentley University. I was the co-organizer of the Boston Service Jam last year, and I was also an expert in residence for General Assembly in their UX design course last summer. So, like I mentioned, I work with BioRaft. We're an enterprise safety, compliance, and training software for lab scientists. That sounds like a really big mouthful, but basically we just help them organize their training and their compliance documents to keep everyone safe and keep everyone out of the news. We're software as a service multi-site application, and we're hiring. So if you're at all interested, come talk to me later and we'll chat. So, talked about me a little bit. So just quick questions about you guys. So none of these are mutually exclusive. How many of you all are usability professionals? Okay, got a couple. Project managers? Okay. Developers? Okay. Designers? And fall into some other category. I feel the everything. I really do. So the philosophy that we're going to be talking about today, if the user can't find it, the function's not there. If a tree falls in the forest, did it really make a sound? So that was interesting. All right, so we'll be going through high-level introduction to information architecture, how to perform your research, the nuts and bolts of navigation, and then how to design it, and then just a few things to keep in mind. So we're starting with information architecture, and just like an architect designs your house, figures out where the walls are going to go, where your pathways are going to be, makes sure how to make it all happen without your house crumbling down, information architecture does the same thing, just with your information. The thing I love about this field is that the metaphors are really blunt. They mean pretty much exactly what they sound like, just with data instead of physical objects. So really, it creates intuitive ways to navigate data. That intuitive part is the most important part, because people need to know what they're doing. It makes information easy to find. And your information schemes have to be concise, because you don't want people's attention wandering off, but they have to be descriptive. Someone has to know what this label means. They have to be mutually exclusive. If you're at a fork in the road, you need to know if you should go left or right, and if they will end you up in very different places. And there also has to be information sent. Now, information sent, another of the metaphors that's really exactly what it sounds like. Just like a bloodhound picks up on a scent to figure out what direction it should be going in, information sent is just those little hints that tell you, oh, okay, this is the right direction. This is where I should be going. It helps inform those decisions so that you know whether to go down the left fork or the right fork or turn around altogether. And it also allows information that doesn't seem relevant to be discarded or ignored, because sometimes there's a ton of information there. You can't process it all. And so you need to have that quick filter of, okay, yeah, no, this doesn't smell right. This doesn't seem like where I need to go. I'm just going to ignore it. It's going to go over there. And if I need it, I can come back to it. So, much as a bloodhound searching for a scent, information sent, you arrive at the page. I've been told I need to stay sort of here with the camera, so I can't point as much as I wanted. But so you arrive at a page, you search for cues for whatever it is you're looking for, and you decide, did you find one? Well, no. Okay. Bye. See you later. But if you do find a cue, you can follow it. Is the scent getting weaker? No? Okay, cool, cool. We're going well. Is it too much effort to keep going? Did they make me go too far down a rabbit hole? Okay, what I was looking for was really not worth all this effort, so I'm going to head out. But if it is worth the effort, then you continue, and eventually you find the thing you're looking for, and that is success. But, you want to make sure that the fewest number of people leave as possible, because you only want them to be getting there if it's relevant, and you want them to be finding the pieces that they need. So the things that your users need to know to sort of pick up that sense, so they need to know, am I in the right place? So I'm looking for a shirt. So should I be going on an auto parts store? Probably not. So does this site have what I'm looking for? And for some places like Amazon, the answer is always yes. Like, it's always yes. But for others, not so much. And then, okay, so I'm looking for this shirt. I found this one that I kind of like, but is there something better? And, okay, so, no, I'm convinced this is the shirt that I want. What do I do now? So, went through this pretty high level, so I'm going to just blow through it. But these are in the notes for you guys later when you're trying to remember what all I was talking about. So, am I in the right place? Make sure that they know what your site is for. Remember that these days, every page can be your homepage thanks to Google. And someone will search for something random, end up on a page in the middle of your site, totally miss that beautiful homepage that you have that tells them everything they need to know. They still need to be able to figure it out. And make sure that you're using organization systems that make sense. Think about your data. Think about how someone would be looking through your data and organize it that way. You don't want to organize something by date created if they're going to be searching for it by letter of the alphabet. You also need your here and you were there indicators so that they don't backtrack unless they need to. And is there anything better? Your hierarchy should be obvious. Breadcrumbs are one way to do this. We'll be talking about those a little bit later. And also see also options. So, okay, you're looking at this shirt. Maybe you also want to look at this, and that other shirt. And then for what now? Make sure that your next steps are obvious. Don't hide your call to action somewhere. Also, you need to consider, why are users visiting your site? So if you're searching for something like a shirt, maybe you're going to Amazon. You have a task to accomplish. I know I use Trello all the time to make sure I get everything done. I actually use Trello to make this presentation because I can move everything around. Or maybe you're just killing time. Facebook, the great time killer. But it's not always mutually exclusive. Maybe you're going on Amazon just to browse. Or maybe you're going on Facebook because you need to find out someone's birthday. So these aren't always cut and dry categories, but it will inform sort of the direction that you should be heading in. So I can't be a usability professional standing in front of you without at some point suggesting research. So how you figure out what your organization should be, you've got to observe people, you can study your competition. Also, if you can't get out and actually talk to the people, you can look at your search logs. What are people looking for and finding, and what are they not finding? And is that exposing a hole in what you should be offering? Or is it saying that people are coming to you looking for totally the wrong thing? I used to work at theladders.com. We would get people calling us all the time looking for an 8-foot ladder. We work in resumes. So it was clear that there was just some mismatch there. So there are always several methods to do your research. There's your card sort, path diagramming, task analysis, journey mapping, and creating a site map. So card sort, how many people are familiar with card sorts? Okay, so another delightfully straightforward metaphor. Literally, you have some sort of cards and you sort them into categories. Imagine you've got a deck of playing cards and you're told to categorize them. There are a number of different ways that different people will do that. Maybe you're categorizing them by suit. Maybe you're categorizing them by number. Maybe you're categorizing them by your favorite number. It really varies, and you need to know which is the most important to the people who are going to be coming in and looking for the King of Diamonds. Where do I find the King of Diamonds? So this is an early stage technique. There are two types. There's an open card sort where you just give someone cards and say, organize, go, put these together how they best make sense. They can make as many groups as they want. They can label the groups whatever they want. Then there's the closed card sort. So you know you have these four groups, hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. Go from there. And then there's always the hybrid where it's like, okay, you know, we've got these three categories and then you can make your own. But, you know, it always depends on what stage you're at and what your goal is. Maybe you have a really good idea that these four categories are the thing and there's just a few things that might be in one or the other. Or maybe really you know that your information architecture, it either needs redoing or you're just getting started. So maybe the open gives you more ideas. And ideally, this should be done with users, but it's also something that can be done with stakeholders in a room. So you have your various different, you know, your design, your marketing, your UX folk, the customer service folk, figuring out, okay, this is what I've heard, this is what I'm thinking, this is where we think it should go. You should always validate with actual users after doing that, but it can be a way to get some buy-in and save some time. Can also be done individually or in a group. So card sorting is really flexible, which is one of my favorite things about it. And the tools are also really flexible. It can be as simple as sticky notes and markers or postcards, or there are technologies that will help you with this. There's Optimal Sort, UserZoom, UserTesting.com, and I included a link to a few more there. Then there's site path diagramming, which is getting a little bit more into, okay, your user's here, what do they do now? It also makes a nice pretty picture by the time you're done with it. So it's a sketching system that determines the types of users, where they come in from, and the activities once they get there. So it's good for when you're deciding what the site flow should be, some very high-level UI design, and your workflows. And it can show you a process that, okay, it works for this kind of user. Oh, hey, the same process will work for this one and this one. This one's a bit of a special snowflake over here, so we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. Because ideally, your same process would work perfectly for everyone, and then there's the real world. And so the tools that you need something to draw on, lots of colors. You have to be able to draw people. Stick figures work. And if you already have personas, those are a helpful place to start because then you've already thought about who your people are and how they're thinking and how they're going through the process. So to do a site path diagram, you draw a big circle. You put your types of people around the edge, and then ways they come to the site on another edge. All of these directions are in here, and I've included some more resources to figure out exactly how you're doing this. But basically, it gets you to walk through the paths that people take, figuring out where they circle back, where they might leave, where they might come in. Then there's your task analysis, which is an even deeper level. And this is when it starts getting into tables and lots of words and less markers and fun things like that. So it's a way to fill in the little pieces that the scenarios might gloss over. Because the scenarios are meant to be maybe not 30,000 foot, but at least 10,000 foot. And it helps you figure out what design questions you should be answering. And capture some of the subtleties of each step in the process. You might say, sign in. Okay, well, is it just, I say, hi, log in and go, or do I need to create a login? Okay, how strong does my password need to be? How much other information do I need? Is it just username and password, or do you also need my address, my phone number, my birth date, my sign, my blood type, etc.? So really, what you're doing is you're determining the goal, pulling the pieces from your scenarios that pertain directly to that goal, then you're breaking them down into smaller pieces. You're determining the subtasks, and then you're looking at your subtasks. Okay, can I break this down any more? Kind of like factoring. And also, once you figure out the smallest pieces of this interaction, you start adding in how does the system interact with this? What's happening on the other side of the computer or the screen or whatever this person is using to interact on? Because you'll notice all of this, I've been extremely technology agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's going to be a physical map of the roads that you need to figure out how to get to, a building or a website. It doesn't matter if it's a huge screen the size of life or a smartwatch. All these processes are the same. And there's also site mapping. I'm sure a lot of you are a little bit more familiar with this. Getting some nods? Yeah? Okay. And so this is one of the more conventional items that you can do, and it's just, okay, what links to what? And there are different kinds. There's the tree map up here. There's your comb map, which is like a tree map, but things go off to the side instead of branching out. Then there is your star map in the upper right. It looks kind of like a star. Everything's coming out from the center. And then there's your tab map. And you use those in different situations. So tree map is great for your hierarchy when you have a small amount of things, because horizontal space, you run out of it eventually. The comb map is good for when you run out of that horizontal space and you still need more room to go. The star map is for when your hierarchy isn't really strict, which, I mean, it sort of explains the arms branching out in all directions. And your tab map is when things are grouped by similarities instead of any sort of hierarchy. So when you're building your site maps, the things that you need to consider, and maybe you're building it from scratch, and maybe you're taking an existing site and redoing it. These questions are the same. So should your site be big or small? Should there be a lot of pages, or should it be really streamlined? Should my architecture be shallow or deep? Should there be a lot of things at the top, or should there just be a few things, but then they each have a lot of things going into them? And how important is it that there's the top level, and then there's a sub-level, and then there's the sub-sub-level? Is that critical to the way people are going to understand where they're going? And also, are there multiple ways that people would be getting to the same thing? And there are no right or wrong answers at this point. You're just pulling together the decisions that you need to inform your later designs. Also, you can never forget journey mapping. It's really just taking the maps from earlier, going through each of the steps, and thinking about how your user is going to feel at each of these steps. It's not just, okay, so they're going to go here, they're going to give me all of their information and their social security number and their mother's maiden name. Oh wait, in journey mapping you realize that they're going to get kind of annoyed. And so you weigh the costs and gains of annoying your users. Because sometimes it's worth it. Okay, so you've got all this information, you're ready and raring to go. It's design time, right? Not quite yet. So you have to remember there are three main forces at play. There's always the business drivers, because at the end of the day, if there's no money, there's no thing. You got your users, who are going to be the ones to give you that money, or in the cases of things like social media, they're the means to getting that money. And then there's technology. Like, what can you actually do in the medium that you're planning on using? This is where you have to start thinking about the limitations of what technology you're using, but it still shouldn't be limiting you too much. It should just be narrowing you down in the funnel of what you can and can't do. And also, like I was mentioning before about annoying your users, you have to think about what roadblocks you can and can't put up. Marketing wants advertisements to be in a more central place. The call to action should be right there, but the user might want to do something different on that page, or they might, yeah, I've seen this advertisement, I don't care. And it's weighing those costs and benefits and seeing, is the drop-off going to be more damaging than whatever good? Or is it going to balance out or even be better? And so I'm not saying never put things in your user's way, just be smart about it. So now we're getting to the actual navigation. There are a few different kinds. And again, navigation, going in this direction. So there's your structural navigation, which is more hierarchy. So there's this group, and then under that, there's this group, this group, this group. Then there's your associative navigation. Okay, I found this shirt. I want to find other shirts like it. And then there's your utility navigation that a lot of people just sort of don't think about. It's your sign-in, your my profile, or whatever sort of user information you interact with. Often, like, contact us or help is up there too. So, with the structural navigation, there's generally the global and local. So global, the big stuff. It's your large categories. It's visible from every page. This is also what gives users a rough idea of what your site's about when they come in the middle of your site and miss your home page altogether. Then there's your local navigation, which those are your subcategories. They're often page specific, and so you have to think about how that ties into every experience that they're having at that particular page and how they're getting there and how much space it's taking up. And so there are two ways that people access information. So there's pogo sticking. So, okay, I'm in iTunes, I'm looking for some music. I know that I want to listen to Blank Space by Taylor Swift. So going through, and eventually I end up on the song. But there's the song, and then there's the album, and then there's the artist, and then there's the genre, and so there's several steps. Well, pogo sticking means you need to go back. So I need to go back to the album to find another song, or I need to go back to the genre to find something totally different. It means you have to jump back to get there. Whereas crab walking is the opposite. You can get there, okay, so I'm at this level, I'm going to stay at this level to get to something else. So it's a little bit easier for error recovery because you don't need to jump back, but it requires that everything at the same level is visible. This is where a lot of the people who viewed this item also viewed this item, or, okay, you just finished reading this article, you might also want to consider. There's also faceted classifications. So this is good if you have items that can be classified by many characteristics. Music is one of these. Food's another one. So you have this recipe for cookies you need to find. Well, okay, it's peanut butter cookies. So which direction do you get at it from? Are you going from, like mom's home cooked recipes? Are you going cookies, chocolate? And so there's many different pieces that people can know about something and choose to search by. And so this is really for when there's no good one direction for people to go down, one path. And so you see on the left, there's your standard hierarchy, but then on the right, there's your facets. There's the three different pieces that can get you to that one item. And so now you've thought about what your structures should be, what your information layout should be, even if you haven't started thinking about the pretty pictures. So that means it's time to start thinking about the pretty pictures and where things should physically go on your site. So for navigation locations, you have three options. There's the top. So this is useful because all of the navigation is visible at once. There's no scrolling. It means that the full width of the screen is available to content under the navigation. And it's good if you have a few big categories, but it gets messy if you have more than about 4 or 5, because then you just end up with that more drawer that ends up creating another level of navigation that you didn't intend for. Then there's left navigation. It's more flexible with the number of categories because you can scroll infinitely, but it leaves less space for the local navigation and the content because it is taking up that space on the side. Your third option, you can put your navigation on the right, but don't do it. It's the least effective with users. You might want to try something new, break some new ground. I'm telling you, research says it's been done. That's not the place where you want to try something new. So then, regardless of top or side, there's also the mega menu. I know, you guys have been waiting for the mega menu to show up for the past 25 minutes. So what it does, it can be introduced at several different levels of navigation. but it shows you multiple levels all at once. And in 2009, Jacob Nielsen endorsed mega menus. So that means that's it. The conversation's done, right? You can use it everywhere. No, not quite. Like everything, there is a time and a place. So it does allow you to see more at once. So recognition over recall, always great. And it requires less drill down. But the amount of space it takes can be pretty significant, and it can be overwhelming just seeing that many items all at once. And it's also not mobile friendly. Like your phone screen is only this big. A menu that's this big isn't good. It's also not good on lower resolution screens. Same problem. If you've got scrolling to be able to see the entire menu, it's totally defeated the purpose. Then, I promised we would talk about breadcrumbs a little bit more. So this provides a trail of the hierarchy, and it's useful for pogo sticking. I know, okay, I need to go one level up. It's right there. You don't have to figure out where it was in the various paths. And expert users are actually the ones who get the most use out of the breadcrumbs. And it also gives you that good sense of self. So even if you're screenshotting something, you have that second, okay, I know exactly where I am. I know exactly where I'm going. You should always make sure to use the greater than sign instead of the colon, because you're indicating that you're going further in. So this leads to that, leads to the next. And it should live right under the page title to be most effective. However, the jury is still out whether they decrease task completion time or increase success rate. However, there's nothing to indicate that they hurt. So they just might not help. Then, okay, so we've talked about our global navigation. We've talked a little bit about what happens with the lower levels, but now, sub-navigation. So where should it go? Well, you should always start at the top or the left with your global navigation. Well, this is your left. For the global navigation, again, right's no good. But then, what's next? So the second and third selections should be at the same place. But the first can be in a different place. You start at the top and then go left, left. That was found to be about equally effective as starting on the left and then continuing on the left. So that's a lot of directional things all at once. So when I say top, left, left, I mean you start by clicking something at the very top, and then you've got your categories on the left, then your next thing also on the left. Whereas with left, left, left navigation, just these drawers keep opening up on the left. And it's the same conversations we were having about where the global navigation should go. It's how much space you need to be able to put the information in. You also have the option of top, top, but it's running into your same problems of you can run out of space really quickly, and it can make things really uncomfortable. Also, just want to put it out there, hover, it's not good for usability. How many of you have accidentally triggered a hover menu and not been able to get rid of it? Okay, as long as I'm not alone here. So people think it's faster than clicking because it just sort of appears. It's not actually any faster in terms of performance. And the accidental triggering and untriggering of the menus annoys the bejesus out of people, and it causes people to unnatural cursor movements. So you're starting at sports and fitness. You want to get down to tennis rackets. Well, okay, you want to move your mouse here. Oh, you moved out of sports and fitness, and oh, the menu went away. You ended up with a different one. So then you didn't notice, and you ended up clicking on something in photo, wondered how you got there, got really frustrated. So you have to follow the tunnel, and then to go over and then down, which is unnatural, slower, more annoying. Whereas if you click, it'll stay there until you unclick. It also makes it harder when you're watching screens with some software. They don't necessarily catch hovers. Also, I've had the experience fairly recently where there was a hover at the top of the page. I needed to get to something right under it, so I had to like loop around where the hovers were and come at it from the bottom. Definitely not making anything faster. Sometimes the best navigation is no navigation at all. Your users are in a spot where if they deviate, it's going to cause problems. So maybe they're in an initial setup wizard, or they're in the middle of a really important form where if they skip this step, they're just going to have to go back and do it again later. So, letting them skip is not going to actually help anything. And again, this is a pretty drastic decision to make, so think about it hard. Think about why you're doing it and whether it's worth that sudden feeling for the users of, oh, I'm stuck here. Are you forcing them through a tunnel, or are you holding their hand, guiding them through? And also, how users search. There are a few different ways. So either there's a known item search. Okay, so I want a specific book. I know the book name, I know the author, I know the edition. Okay, go to Amazon, put it in. Done. There's exploratory seeking. Oh, I want a book on information architecture. I'm sure there's some out there. And there's, I don't know what I need to know. This is the hardest one to account for because there's so many unknowns. And then there's, oh, I saw that thing before. I remember it was blue. There was a blue cover. How do I get back there? And so wayfinding is really important for this. So this is the New York City subway map. Yeah, me too. And it's just, again, wayfinding. You're trying to figure out how to find your way from here to there. So there are various studies out there that when driving, women navigate by landmarks, men navigate by street names, north, south, east, west. Well, on a website, there's only landmarks. So for some people, that's unnatural to begin with. And so you need to make sure that these landmarks are really clear. These users need to know where they are, where's the thing they need, how do they get there, and where have they already looked? I mean, how many times have you been looking for your keys and you look in the same 4 spots over and over again because that's where it should be, right? But they're not. Also make sure that your organization is consistent because you don't want to add that additional mental load to your users, and provide detours for errors. Before the days of GPS being everywhere, I knew that wayfinding was not so good for me because I'd make a wrong turn, I'd be lost, and I'd panic because there was no obvious way to get back on track. So you want to make sure that there is an obvious way to get back on track. And just a few things to keep in mind. When you're organizing your content, users perform better with deep rather than wide navigation, so have fewer top levels but more sub-levels. Good navigational structure doesn't make up for junk labels. People need to figure out what that thing is that is in your labels, your menus, etc. And you should organize products and features together with a focus on what they have in common instead of organizing by goal. So none of us are mind readers, and people come in with several different goals. Think back to my slide on Amazon, Trello, and Facebook. So instead of trying to put your psychic hat on and figure out, okay, so they just did this task, so maybe they're going to go to this one next. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can't. Also, novices are only novices for a short time. Sometimes they go to expert, but mostly you've got people stuck, or not stuck, but plateauing at intermediate, and that's fine. You want to make sure that you're not in the way. So I'm rewatching Game of Thrones, and this quote just came up. So Jamie's talking to his cousin. You knew when you were needed and when to go away. It's a rare talent. And the opposite of this, who remembers Clippy in Microsoft? Yeah, you don't want to be Clippy. No one wants to be Clippy. Also, remember that you're likely going to grow. There are going to be more pieces added to whatever you're working on. So allow some room for that. Yes, eventually you're going to have to reorganize as things grow organically, but you don't want that to be after your first item. You want it to be after, 5, 10, 15 items change. And avoid making your structures too narrow or too deep, because either it's overwhelming for people to make that first choice, or they just sort of get lost in the rabbit hole and fall off. So what's different with mobile versus desktop? Well, on mobile, space is more limited. You've got your 4-inch screen as opposed to your 15-inch screen. Also, fat fingers, your targets need to be a little bit bigger. And your navigation may be hidden by default. Note, I am not getting into the hamburger conversation, avoiding that one altogether. But hover is also not an option. Yes. And your relevant content may be different because mobile has that option of being context aware. And also there are just some things that are hard to do on a phone that you might take away. So what is still left to be seen is how even smaller screens that are with us even more all the time will impact that. Because, what my 2-year-old smartwatch can do and what the Apple Watch can do that just came out, a few months ago, drastically different. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays into everything. And so then I've got all my credits and my resources. So this book, Information Architecture, Blueprints for the Web, was incredibly detailed and useful, and I largely summarized it for this presentation. So if you want any more, definitely go check that out. And I put all the relevant links in the notes section of my slides, which will be posted. So that is the wrong slide. But so that's everything. Do you guys have any questions for me? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. What's your advice then when you have a site where you have a lot of products and a lot of stuff that you do?
Yeah.
That was a disc jockey in my previous life, actually.
Eliminate things or categories?
The question was...
So search becomes a very powerful tool when you have items like that. And search is kind of that double-edged sword because sometimes people are searching because your structure isn't clear and they can't find the thing. And sometimes it's just because there's so many things and they just, okay, I know I need a shirt. Well, okay, so then I should look for shirt. So search is probably the most helpful on mobile because you do have to make things so pared down to move forward on that side screen.
Prioritize search structure or
And so that kind of gets to what the next step is, but this is before they've even started finding their items. So if the main way that they're going to find it is going to be search, then yeah, search should be really obvious to them. You shouldn't make them struggle and then, oh, okay, here's search, found it. Okay, I can breathe now. Any other questions? Yeah? So I have not investigated it.
Can you repeat the question for...
Okay, so what Bridget was asking is the shortened down version of the impacts of mega menus on accessibility. Because if you're using a screen reader and it's reading through every item, well, if you have a more conventional menu that only has 7 items, okay. But if you have your mega menu, you're not going to a mega menu unless there's like a couple dozen items on there to begin with. So that makes the screen reader just talk for a really, really long time. So I have not done any research on that. I definitely see that as a problem. Also, with people who just make their screens larger, that is definitely a problem because you're running out of enough space to actually see the menu itself. So it's definitely something that we're going to come into fairly soon. Good to know. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely an option. It's just once you get to that certain breakpoint, you want to make sure that your mega menus aren't showing up anymore.
Maybe not the question you can answer, but
I love those.
So the accessibility thing just made me think. There must be low vision users who have like smartphones. So like at that point, how are we handling, or is there even any sort of consideration of how we might handle sort of menu navigation in that context? If we're already talking about like transforming menu schemes for responsive, and surely having, maybe not the. Our strategy has been that we generally sort of take the full menu, even though we might hide it on the normal sort of desktop, and then once you get it deeper, then we show sort of a contextual submenu. But on mobile, we're just showing the full extended menu. But if they've got sort of like a reader with their phone, and it's telling them like, here's your full list of options, then that's again the place to go.
And so that's really it's sort of underlining the fact that you need to figure out how many options you really need. And maybe just sitting there listening to a screen reader will point out to you how many options you have, and maybe that's what you need, and maybe it's not. And yeah, you were right. That was a great question. I have no idea how to answer it, but really, I'm glad I got you thinking this morning.
Pondering, so worth researching.
Yeah.
So, suppose you have a client who says, I want 10 or 12 things going across the top of my main menu. And, just common sense, I'm no UX expert, but I know that, 5, 6, maybe 7 is that. So what can I say? Can I say research shows that, or is there some clever analogy I can use to convince them? Or
So
do I just have to hire user experts to convince them? They can spend money to figure out that I'm right.
Well, what I would do personally, because right now I'm trying to convince my boss that we need to investigate our information architecture a little bit more. So the tack that I'm going with is that we need to think about how far we're making someone dig. And if you have those 12 items, only the first 4 or 5 are going to be visible. And if you have that more option, that's taking up one of your 4 or 5. And so it's thinking about, okay, so is it worth making 8 of those items a secondary? Because they can't, there's physically not enough room for them all to be at that same level. So getting them to prioritize. That gets into the just general best practices of, what font sizes you should use for visibility. And so it's not going to be an easy conversation. It's just going to be, you gotta be confident and stick to your guns. Unfortunately, that's the best I've got in terms of that. Yeah?
I have an answer to that because I did it all the time.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, who's the brand guardian? When you bring the brand guardian in, usually like marketing people, they don't want to see tiny blocks. They've got a look and they want to preserve a look for the product or the website. And so you can get the brand guardian on your side. And then, and then it's a matter of usability. I get my mom and so, but my mom orders on Amazon. She bought a car on eBay. Okay, so she's a user, right? But she paid free. And I go, look, my mom can't do that. And I'll video my mom doing something. And so you get like a couple of users like that they will say, well, not our most typical user, certainly.
The question was, what is being outlet
and you get something that they will recognize as a potential person who could be buying or using the product, but they can suddenly see the obstacle that person has, and it doesn't have to be like a big usability test behind mirror glass and everything. I mean, it's literally the people that they know, and you put something in front of them when they see that they don't know how to click it and they don't understand it and they don't like it, it makes them step back and reassess. Now we can spend $40,000 on usability tests for you. And that's worked for me like a week.
And especially with low vision, people automatically think of, your 80-year-old mother. But, okay, so I see a lot of people in this room are wearing glasses, and I'm sure some of y'all are wearing contacts. So how many of you have had that moment where your glasses are just bugging you and you need to take them off for a few minutes, and suddenly you're a low vision user? So it's a lot more pervasive than a lot of people think, because, I've got glasses, that's just, okay, it's fine. And so sort of pointing that out to them, especially if one of them's wearing glasses, ask them to take their glasses off and then look at it. But, right. Any other questions, guys? Yeah?
I have a question about navigation. So, like, they click on a top level navigation and then get sent to a page that the main purpose of the page is like another navigation. I was wondering if you've done any testing on those pages.
So I haven't done testing on that, but you shouldn't be going to a page that its sole purpose is more navigation, except in very specific situations, like when you go to like Amazon and there's that page where you can like view all your orders and do all of your account stuff, but that's more in utility. If you are clicking on a navigation item, like there should be some sort of task or piece of information that can be accomplished on that page. It shouldn't just solely be a throughway.
What if it's like the department listing, the department change, so like an agency.
You're still getting, okay, so it's a question of what information you're getting. So sometimes you just need to know what the departments are. So you are still getting valid information. You need, if the departments are changing, you need to know if the one you're still looking for, if the one you're looking for is still there. So I would say that you're still getting information. So it might be a small piece of information, but you're still getting some information from that. Sorry, guys. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much. And it looks like it's about lunchtime, so enjoy. You guys have been great.